Hey Josh, thank you so much for being here today. We're super excited to have you. I would love if you could introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Josh Bachynski. I have a master's degree and I was doing a PhD in philosophy until I decided, you know what? Academia is boring. I would like to write books instead. And so, among other things, I did some SEO and AI consulting. That's what pays the bills right now. But my true passion, Courtney, as we were just discussing, is writing books. I have two books, two philosophical books that I've written, which are nonfiction. And my wife and I right now are on a very interesting project about a fictional book, a sci-fi fantasy book called How It Ends, about the end of time. And so I've loved to talk about books, all things books, and I'm ready to go.
Love it. I would love if you could talk more about your books that you have out.
Sure. So the one that I've published, and I use scare quotes because I self-published, it's on thezombiesbook.com. The book is called The Zombies. And that's a philosophical book that was actually my master's thesis. And I adapted my master's thesis and I tried to prove that there is a true ethics and a true morality that is actually quite compassionate, quite kind, but also provable, demonstrable. And it's an actual, it's not just a subjective position. I'm trying to get us out of the mire of he said, she said, no one, this nebulous kind of zone where everyone thinks that the moral truth is relative. I took this relative concept and I showed how that could be made into something stalwart that we can all rely upon. It can guide us in every situation. And it was surprising to me when I was doing my master's degree at Dalhousie University, which is a great university in Halifax, Canada, which is a beautiful little town, by the way, if you ever get to visit. And Dalhousie is a great school. Don't get me wrong. I'm not critiquing Dalhousie by what I'm about to say. But we would have these Friday symposiums every Friday, and I'm just a little master's student, and there's the big PhDs there, and they're debating forever, and they would get animated in their face, and they're screaming at each other. Kant was right. No, no, Plato was right. No, Hume was right. And I thought, wouldn't it be nice if we could solve this problem that philosophy has been trying to solve for 5,000 years and none of us have been able to solve it? And so, kind of ambitious, but I'm slightly autistic. I'm on the spectrum and a high IQ. And I thought, this isn't hard. I can fix this. So I tried to do that. And The Zombies is my attempt to solve it. It's a philosophical text. It's not like the other philosophical texts that people might have read in the sense that I try not to be boring. I try to be quite I don't pull any punches in my beliefs and what I say, but I back up everything I believe with, I think, a sound argumentation that I think anybody could read and realize that I'm seeking to do nothing but good and make good for people. And so I can encapsulate the moral theory for you in just a couple sentences. It is seeking the ideal. For example, Courtney, I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of friends where we've gone drinking and I was too drunk to drive home. So I went to stay at their place. And they just have a couch. Or my friends, we're in grad school. No one has any money, so they don't have a second bedroom. Oh yes, go stay in the East Wing. Like that. That didn't happen, right? They have a couch. They have a floor usually, which I could sleep on. And they would say this sentence. They would say, "I know it's not ideal, but." Think about that sentence for a second. Think about the ubiquitous, I can't even say the words at the end of the day, how ubiquitous that sentence is, how little explanation it requires. Everyone knows about what the concept of the ideal is. And this concept is as old as Buddha and as old as Plato. The concept of the ideal, the perfect, the maximal goodness. Everyone knows what this is. And I realized that is the basis of morality. And it's quite forgiving and it's quite compassionate, but it also gives strong guidelines as to what to do. It's the perfect moral system for both the left and the right that I think we could all possibly, heaven forbid, agree on maybe one day, right? So that's all I'll say about that. I just want to say that it's very positive, it's very uplifting. And that's what I talk about in The Zombies. And even more in another book that I have that I'm looking to publish, to self-publish, which is called Tao Agathos. The Zombies is kind of a critique of society, and maybe between you and me, Courtney, and the wall, maybe a little bit acerbic because I had quit academia, and I have to admit, maybe I had a bit of a chip on my shoulder, perhaps. If the word failing academia, comes to mind. Tao Agathos is my attempt to give the positive, the spiritual, the meditative, the good version of it, the happy-go-lucky feeling of it, where you can adopt this good philosophy and you're seeking the ideal in every situation, and it's the ideal or the optimal by which we are measured. And so we're seeking the good, which the Greek word for is agathos. And so that's part of the title, agathos. The other word, Tao, is a Mandarin word, as you probably recognize, which means the truth, the spirit, the path, the process. And also, Tao is a name for a sword as well in Mandarin. So, Tao agathos is my positive version. And that's the second piece of philosophy, which is kind of a companion piece to the zombies. So, if you like philosophy, if you like digging into Kant or Hume or something like that, the zombies would be for you. But if you like something more meditative, a little lighter, if you like something that is a little bit more uplifting, it's the same philosophy. It's just from two different perspectives. You might want to contact me for Tao Agathos. I'd be happy to send anyone a copy. Email me at joshbachynski@gmail.com or contact me on thezombiesbook.com for either of those philosophical works.
Love that. What inspired you to write your books?
Oh, what a beautiful question. Well, there was the aforementioned chip on the shoulder that I mentioned before, and it really was that. It's I've been like I said, I'm mildly autistic, and so I've felt kind of like an outsider, quite frankly, all my life. And I'm looking in, and I'm looking at these people, and I'm like, everybody's nuts. Like nobody, my parents are nuts. My friends are nuts. Their parents are nuts. I mean, I think we all think that, but I really thought that. And I'm like, what is this philosophy stuff? I should figure it out. What is the truth? What is reality? What is that? Is it real? Why? Why are we here? What is the meaning of life? What is the purpose? Is there a purpose? Is that the best way to quantify it, to describe it? What is the moral truth? What is truly ethical? What is truly moral? And so I've been on this journey forever, quite frankly, and just ended up in academia because that's the best place. Well, that actually is not at all. I discovered the best place to answer those questions. That's the place you're supposed to go to answer those questions. But for the last 5,000 years, academia has failed to answer those questions. And quite frankly, they should be a little embarrassed at that. I think if it took you 5,000 years to get something as precious as the moral truth and you failed, maybe the hard sciences has possibly a little bit of evidence to suggest that maybe philosophy should get their stuff together, so to speak. But I endeavored, as a child of philosophy and as a student of philosophy, I endeavored to solve it. And I have to admit, it was a little bit of show upmanship. It was a little bit of, obviously being this autistic and or this egotistical, take your pick. Uh, 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 the academics, for some reason, don't respond very well to me when I tell them you're wrong. That's not how it works, because they're the ones with tenure and they're the ones who are supposed to know, right? For some reason, I didn't survive in academia, for some reason. High IQ, very low EQ. I don't know what is right to say in various social situations sometimes. So it was also a little bit of showing them, look, it's easy. Here, I'll write it in a 60-page master's thesis. And I did. And they passed it. They didn't like it, but they passed it, right? They couldn't find a flaw with it. I keep getting this. They're like, I can find no flaw with your argument, but I don't believe it. Okay, well, that's more a reflection of them than it is me, I think, at that point. But the moral truth doesn't have to be persuasive. It just has to be true, right? It's on you to take it in after it's proven, right? So yeah, and actually after about 200 test readers, absolutely no one has ever been able to find a flaw with it. They've all said, I can find no flaw with this, logically, this argument. It doesn't convince me. And I explain why in the zombies, why that is because that's why I called it the zombies, because we're all infected. We're all infected with this virus of this kind of vanity morality. And that's what I feel like. I feel like I don't want to make the I Am Legend comparison because that's probably dated now and he's out of fashion. But I feel like I feel like the Omega Man. If I'll go back to that to that post-apocalyptic movie, I feel like I'm the last person who's understanding what morality is and still trying to seek it, and everybody else are just sadly spending a lot of time looking for likes on social media and not really paying a lot of attention to what true morality is. Maybe, perhaps, or maybe not. Perhaps it's unfair. But so the entirety of my life, Courtney, has been what has spurred me to make this book. I could not have written anything else first. When I was 17, I wanted to actually write novels and fiction. But then I went on I took the longer road of philosophy, as Plato calls it. And I burnt my poems on the altar of philosophy, which is another Platonic reference. And then I came back, and now that I've solved philosophy, it's done. I have a free philosophy course as well. If anyone else wants me to solve philosophy for you, I can, and solve your life for you too. What you should be doing. It's not that difficult. I've solved philosophy in 20 lectures. You can join my free philosophy course if you want to learn them. I have a Discord group. It's free. You can join. I'll explain it all to you in no uncertain terms. If you're seeking some quantifiable boundaries in your life of what the truths are, I can provide that. However, out of fashion, truth happens to be these days. So as I said, Courtney, I could have written nothing else. I could have done nothing else in my life. But now that that's done, now my wife and I want to put philosophy into fiction, beautiful fiction, and beautiful narratives.
Love that. When you were writing your books, who were you thinking of when it comes to who they're for?
Wow. Okay. So for the philosophy books, ideally everyone, because I think everyone needs to know what morality is. Everyone thinks they know what morality is. Everyone has psychologically speaking, and this I studied at the graduate level. Everybody has a moral concept. Every single person has a moral concept, even the so-called immoral ones. Their moral concept differs from everyone else's. They think this is acceptable when we don't. They think this is good and right when we don't. And then people of good faith can even disagree as to what that is. So everybody, it should be theoretically the subject of these books. It's simple enough you can teach it to a child, and needs to be. Otherwise morality is useless, right? That's another problem of academic philosophy right now, is that all the theories, period, but all the moral theories are so jargon filled, so full of specific language that no one else can understand, that good luck ever teaching that to a child. Do you think you could teach Kantian deonticism and moral intuitionism to a child? They couldn't teach it to me, and my IQ is tested as high as 160. So that, good luck, right? It has to be simple enough you can teach it to a child. So I'd like that to be the case, but arguably it's going to be for people who want to read philosophy, who want to know the truth. Anyone who is hurting and has that hole inside where they know they need to fill it with something. They need an answer. Anyone who needs an answer, anyone who is questioning their life or what life is about, or what they should be doing, that is a book for them, because it will bring them joy, it will bring them positivity, it will bring them purpose. And trust me, it's not, the purpose is not to give me their credit card number or something like that. There'll be no, the books are free. There are no upsells here in the books. You can have the books for free. I'll give it to you. You could join my group for free. I could do it no other way, right? So I know there's a lot of charlatans out there. So sometimes when I talk, people are like, "Oh yeah, sure, Josh. When do you upsell the credit card? You could join my cult, and we all wear white robes and we go swimming in the lake." That doesn't. Please don't find me. I have no robes. That's not going to happen, right? No, this is all for free. I give for free. The fantasy book. It's interesting. We are thinking of giving that for a very low price for the electronic version, but for the paper version, we want to do printed 6x9, very beautiful artistic work in it. And we're thinking using right now actually Midjourney, the AI tool Midjourney, to do the art for it. So that would be for any sci-fi fantasy fans out there as well.
Love that. How long have you been writing? What made you really start writing?
Well, like I said, I've been writing all my life. I've been ever since I was a child. I've been writing stories, making stories, trying to control things, trying to get control of my life. Not to get too dark or sad, but I was abused as a child. I was physically abused as a child. I was beaten, and obviously, any kind of child in that situation wants to get control of it, right? They want to try and get control, and I would try to do that and try to figure out, like, why is this happening, and in general, and in specific and in the more general. It wasn't until actually I was around 15 years old to 18 years old that I was introduced to this little thing called Dungeons and Dragons. And then I blossomed. And then I found a place where I could make my stories and people could interact, and I could make stories improv on the fly. And I could tell, because I'd watch movies and TV shows more now that I'm pushing 50, and I know how to string a narrative together, and I know how a story should be told to make it enjoyable. At 18, I had some senses, some artistic senses at that point, and not as much as a craftsman, obviously, but I could make the TV shows that I wanted to make, and I could make the movies I wanted to make. And I could think like, okay, well, I see what you're doing, Spielberg. I would have pivoted here. Or I see what you're doing, Lucas. I would have not had Jar Jar Binks, and I would have done this, and I would have done that, and that's where I really could start doing the fictional writing that I wanted to do, the narratives I wanted to do. I remember I had one assignment for my grade 8 English teacher, and we had to write a story. It was supposed to be, 3 or 4 pages. I had written like 20 pages. This epic tale of I think it was Detective Steve Johnson, I think his name was, or something. And he was seeking out a serial killer, and the scene opened up where he had followed the serial killer out on the roof of this residential street. And let's say things did not go well for Detective Johnson. Let's just put it that way. That this is a very evil serial killer. Boo-hoo-ha. So yeah, I've been an active imagination, a very kind of full bodied imagination, which is interesting. It's different than my wife has always been telling stories too, and I'm co-writing this fantasy novel with my wife, and she has more of an experience. I'm more of the God's eye view narrative. She does more of a experiential from the first person kind of narrative, and so we merge our styles together in this new fictional book that we're writing. But to answer your question, since I was a kid.
Love that. What's your schedule like when you are writing a book?
Wow. That's a great question. That is such a good question, because that's what it comes down to, doesn't it? And for me, because I've been doing improv storytelling at the behest of four sardonic teenagers when I was a teenager, 20-year-olds when I was a 20-year-old, 30 years old when I was a 30-year-old, then I took a break off from D&D, and I picked it up recently again. I'm really good at making stories up on the spot. So I will finish a 120,000 word story in months. I will just bang it out hours a day, like I'm possessed, like the muse has possessed me, and she's breathed the enthusiasmos is the Greek word, which where we get the word enthusiasm from, right? She inspire or the word inspiration. She inspires me. She literally takes control of me, and I write it and I write it out. And it's a first draft, it's a first draft. It needs to be, there's spelling typos and things like that, but I'm just going crazy. Whereas my wife's schedule is different. So as you can imagine, working together as co-authors, this has been a mild and being married, this has been a mild source of tension, as you can imagine. She has a different process that produces, she's a better wordsmith than I. She was doing an English PhD. So she's read far more literature than I have. She's read so much. And she's a better wordsmith than I, and her beautifully crafted wordsmithing takes a little longer. And I'm like, God's eye view, like a movie playing in my head. I'm describing the movie, going like crazy. And then we merge them together, and then we take a look, and then I try to make it more like her style, and then she begrudgingly tries to incorporate a bit of my style, so it doesn't seem so disconcerting, unless we want to disconcert the reader with my stark style and her more fluid style. But we've given it to people, and some avid readers. We've given it to some industry professionals, and some could tell that we had co-written it, and some couldn't tell, which was interesting. I thought that's interesting because to me it's quite obvious that there's different authors there, but yeah, so I got so excited I forgot. Oh yes, the process of writing it. So it's a hard question for me to answer that because I know everyone has their own style, and me, I'm a Mack truck. Like when I get inspired to do it, I take all my notes. I have a bare skeleton in my head, and then I just let the story possess me, and then I do whatever zags and zigs I think should be done as I'm encountering it. And I always think, okay, and I always have 3 or 4 arcs going on: A story, B story, C story, overall D story, which is the moral of the story, because I always want to have a philosophical kind of moral of the story there. But obviously, you can't beat people over the head with that either. So, but I have to admit, I don't do the skeleton planning I should ahead of time. That really would make, I think, that process better. I really just kind of get possessed and wing it. And I've been doing that for, oh, geez, 30 years now. And it's ended up pretty good. Uh, uh, but then I always reserve the right after the first draft to zag a different zag, be like, oh, I had this character die here. I'm going to do this here instead, or oh, that's kind of banal. That's kind of, everyone does this move. I'm going to do that move and make you think I'm doing that move, but then a chapter later, I'm going to flip that on its head and do a different move. I like playing. I love playing with the reader's expectations, and so that kind of creativity comes to me in spurts. I can feel like Alex the parrot. If anyone knows the reference, apparently when they taught him a new word, he'd go into the corner of his cage and he'd mumble to himself, and he'd come out and he'd proclaim his new word he was going to say for the scientists. Cork nut, for anyone who has read Oryx and Crake. Which, if you haven't read Oryx and Crake, beautiful sci-fi book, by the way. Margaret Atwood, shout out. I'm kind of like that. I'm kind of like Alex the parrot. I could feel a story coming on, and I'm like, I'm gonna have to release this. This is gonna have to get out of me at some point, right? It either comes out at the table to my D&D people, and then that will become, we'll use tabletop RPG as a improv session, and then that'll become the skeleton for the novels afterwards. For the philosophical treatise, it was measured, and every day. Maybe this is a better answer to your question. Sorry if I'm going on too long. I would always set if you want to be a writer, this is what you need to do. You need to set 1 hour a day, at least 2 hours a day, at least before you do anything else, and that has to be before any other master. That has to be your bay. Before all else, you are a writer, and you're going to work on that book for 2 hours a day. It doesn't mean you have to write for 2 hours a day. It means you have to edit it, you have to read it, you have to look for design or whatever it is. But you really should be focusing on the book at least 2 hours a day, every day. Maybe take a Sunday off, at least in my opinion, because if you don't, you'll never get it done. Right? I think it was a very sobering stat. I think it was in the high 90th percentile. That I think it was 98. I could be wrong on that, but I know it was in the 90%. 98% of books never get finished. People start a book and they never finish it. And for me, that has to be because of discipline, right? At the end of the day, it's just discipline. You have to schedule that, and it's your holy time, and it doesn't matter what the kids say, it doesn't matter what the pets say, it doesn't matter what the spouse says, it doesn't matter what the boss says. That's the time you write that book, and it is your first priority. That's the only way, with all the SEO consulting I'm doing, with all the AI consulting I'm doing to pay the bills, because nobody pays for any of my books right now, yet anyway. To pay the bills, that had to come on the back burner, and I had to get up earlier and be like, okay, in the morning is my ritual. You got a coffee, you're writing, and then you get into a groove and you do it. That would be my suggestion: is you have to schedule an hour a day or 2 hours a day and stick to it. It doesn't matter what happens. Your house is burning down. I don't care. You're still writing that book. And then at the end of the 2 hours, you grab your laptop and run away from your burning house, is what I would recommend.
Love that. What do you need in your writing space to help you stay focused?
That's another great question. So then that leads that reflects back on the previous question there too. Well, you need an office. You need an office. You need a space that's quiet, that no one's going to bother you. That's the other side of that coin. You're like, okay, Josh, yeah, I heard what you said about the kids and the pets, but my writing space is in the living room where the kids and the pets are playing. How am I supposed to do that? The answer is get mom to watch them. Get your sister to watch them. You do what you need to do. Right when they have nap time at a certain time, right then. You need to have your own space to write. It has to be probably quiet, unless you're the kind of person who gets inspired by a coffee shop and the ambiance around you, and you're going to use that as like characters and like in grist. I'm not that way, but I could be. Some of the best writing I've ever done is on vacation. My wife and I was meeting with Google employees at a Google conference, and we were staying in Los Gatos, which is a small community outside of San Jose. Very beautiful community, a storied community with connections to the mob and things like that. And so it was a very historic community. And I did some really good nonfiction writing there. Some that actually, some editorial writing that actually kind of spurned a different career for me and took me on a different path. So definitely going on vacation could definitely help too. New sights, new sounds. Music also can inspire you to write a lot very well as well, especially if it's fiction, emotional writing you're supposed to be doing. Anything with passion that you're supposed to be doing. But you definitely have to have your own office, and then whatever you need in there. I would even have a mini fridge and have your Coca-Colas or whatever you need, and just do the writing, whatever you need to do the writing. You have to be a slave to the writing, in my opinion. Otherwise, it just won't get done.
Love that. Love that. What is your favorite writing snack or drink?
Well, I just mentioned the Coca-Cola. I'm not trying to give a plug to anyone except for, again, Margaret Atwood and Oryx and Crake, but anything Margaret Atwood wrote, actually. But I actually, having said that, I prefer a good chocolate protein shake, a good protein bar. So you're getting your protein while you're doing your writing. And also, if you have to do voice, if you're doing most authors will do their own voice acting too if they're self-publishing, which we're going to do as well. So I would have a nice, a lot of moisture for that to keep the throat nice and lubricated. That's a good time to do your exercise too. I'd be doing squats, and I'd be doing from the diaphragm. I'd be doing squats and I'd be doing my voice acting and have it on the screen. Anyway, you could kill two birds with one stone in regarding that. That's too hard to do when you're actually doing the writing. You have to sit there and actually do it, unless you have an AI and you can dictate to it or something. But for sci-fi fantasy, that wouldn't work because all the funny names of characters and the places, that the exotic places, all right, they went to the city of Kev, a slum hole, and it's like they went to the city of Kevin. It's like, no, it's not the city of Kevin, it's the city of Kev. So that's not going to work, obviously, if you're doing that kind of writing or very technical writing. But yeah, I prefer the protein. I couldn't get enough protein in my diet for the amount of exercise I want to do, or the amount of muscle I want to try to retain vainly at 50 years old.
I love that. What type of books do you personally enjoy reading?
That's, a great question. And so this is where I'm going to shock a lot of people. And my wife consistently teases me and said, I don't read anything anymore. The only thing I read is myself, my own writing. Uh, I've read a lot, of course. I've read hundreds of books, obviously doing a master's degree and a PhD, both fiction. We did a great books, bachelor's, 4 years bachelor's degree at Vancouver Island University, where we read all the great works of art and literature from Mesopotamia on. So I'm very well read, and I've read a lot, not and nearly as well read as my wife, who went on to do an English master's and PhD and has read so much. Her comp was ridiculous. It was inhumanly possible. I don't know how she passed that comp test, but she did, reading some 500 Victorian novels, which, a Victorian novel is not short. So I don't know how she did that, but she's a machine. But I don't read anything anymore. I read my own stories that I'm writing, and work on my own stuff, and read my own philosophy that I'm writing and work on my own stuff. Uh, uh, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think it keeps me focused. I think it keeps me in the game of the voice I want to speak in. I'm pretty. If you want to, I had a singing instructor once, and he told me a piece of advice I think it carries over to writing. He said, if you want to sound like if you want to have a certain sound in your voice, listen to those kind of singers and emulate it, right? So I had a very nasally voice, and so he got me listening to Mel Torme and to some of those 1960s crooners with the deeper kind of voice or whatever, some Elvis too, and I was able to get that. Same thing with writing. If you want to sound like a certain author, or if you want to have the sensibilities of a certain author, we write what we read, right? So that's what I would recommend. If in terms of what writing one should be reading, if you want to be a writer, is who you want to sound like and how you want to come across that way. And because with that philosophy, I'm pretty much only reading and writing myself right now for work purposes, but also for that reason too.
That's that. Are there any books or authors that inspired you to become a writer?
Wow. Um, you know, uh, Robert E. Jordan, the if I'm not no Robert E. Howard and Robert Jordan. I always get those two confused. So Robert E. Howard was the original creator of the Conan stories in the 1930s, who sadly committed suicide. He was the original author for the Conan stories, for the Cull stories, some detective stories, very pulp fiction, 30s stories. I found some of his writing was very inspiring to me when I was a young man, young teenager. And Robert Jordan, of course, who wrote The Wheel of Time. Robert Jordan, not a lot of people know, actually moonlit, moonlit. I don't know sure what the word is. A lot of Conan stories too. He wrote. Tor Books owns the Conan brand now, I believe. At least they did in the '90s, and they were putting out a lot of kind of pulp fiction, fantasy Conan books that I read a lot. Again, with the D&D, right? And of course, Robert Jordan's writing is just beautiful, but he had to keep it short in those books because those books are only, like 80,000 words or whatever. And so you got the Wheel of Time feel without the Wheel of Time length, which was quite nice for me personally. And Conan the Bold was one of John Maddox Roberts is the pen name for that. I don't know who that was. I have my own beliefs that could have been maybe Robert Jordan. I'm not sure at all. I could be totally wrong, but that book, just for whatever reason, just inspired my creativity and inspired my imagination so much that I won't say that that's what's inspired me to write. Writing has always been in me, and the muse has always been in me. And I could not live this life without telling stories and writing. And so I would have done it anyway. But if I have to think of books, that'd be one book. Again, Oryx and Crake by Margaret Atwood that I mentioned is another very inspiring book. And I thought if I could ever write a sci-fi that was half as good as Oryx and Crake, I thought I'd be pretty proud of myself. And I think that my wife and I have. I hope I believe that we have. I'd like it anyway. I hope other people like it when we release it. Um, uh, uh, yeah, telling stories that no one has ever told before interests me. And you might think, well, that's impossible. Every story has been told. I've never read a story about the end of time. I've read a lot of stories about the end of the world. I've never read a story about the end of time the way that we've done it in this book, How It Ends, that we're writing right now. Uh, uh, and don't get me wrong, we've homaged liberally. The movie Legend, for example, is a big influence for us. The Neverending Story is a big influence for us, and those themes are the ancient myth of Gaia, the ancient myth of Pandora had actually two other names, Anisadora and Kalajnaya, which is some of the stuff that we studied when we were doing our PhDs, and when we got bored of our departments and we went to the classics department or we went to the political science department, we borrow from those myths liberally as well. So always telling the untold story and new takes on it is always what's kind of I found interesting, and so I've always been inspired to do that. So I guess the book of life is what inspired me the most, probably.
Love that. What type of books did you grow up reading? Did you have an all-time favorite?
Yeah, so I guess the ones that I had mentioned there, the Conan the Bold was probably my all-time favorite, just because I read it at a very influential age, and it was inspired my imagination. Yeah, so that'll be my answer, and I'll save some time for next questions because I know I've gone on too long on the previous ones.
You're good. I love it.
For
On that,
philosophy, the answer will be Plato's Republic, Alan Bloom's translation of Plato's Republic. And anyone who doesn't know Plato, uh, 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 pick up at least one Plato book, like the Protagoras, the Phalebus, perhaps the Apology. Plato wrote in almost like a play, like a dramatic dialogue, and there was characters, right? It's more than just a work of philosophy. It's a tiny bit of a work of, it's a bit of a dramatic work as well. Not a lot of dramatic work, but it's a lot of philosophy in it, but there's a bit of a dramatic work too. So Plato's Republic for the philosophy side of things, always. The last greatest philosopher, Friedrich Nietzsche, it is said that he read Plato's Republic every year. He'd reread it in the original Greek. There's a reason for that. It's because it is the single most brilliant book ever written in the Western civilization, anyway, in the Western tradition. Probably in all traditions. I'll put that out there. That the human species has ever produced. So anything that important, maybe a cursory look through might be warranted.
love it. On the other side of that, now as an adult, what are your favorite series or authors that if they come out with something, you would automatically grab it?
Wow. Okay. So again, for me, most of the media I consume, most of the stories I consume are movies and TV shows. My wife is still an avid reader. I should have had her here with me. That was what I should have done. Maybe we'll come back on and you can interview both of us because she would be like, "You're wrong." On everything I said here, she'd say, "You're wrong," and it's this way. So at least you get a different view. Um, I like anything that Marvel is doing right now. I know a lot of people roll their eyes about that, but I think that Favreau and Feig are doing a really good job in keeping those stories fairly human. And I like the zigs and zags they do. A lot of the musical choices and the story choices, I would have made the same choices. I like what Dave Filoni is doing with the Mandalorian right now and the Star Wars stories right now. He's really, I think, backfilling Lucas's catalog and giving a lot of poignancy to the story that I think had lost a lot when it was cough cough ruined cough by Abrams in the last three movies. Sorry, did I say that out loud? Yes, I did. Ruined by Abrams in the last three movies. I could see it's not as well put together as his whole arc of Captain America and Iron Man and Thor avenging with ending with the Infinity War. those arcs were very well handled, and we just watched all those movies back to back, and we could see how the arcs were very well handled. Now, in what they're doing in Marvel, I see it looks a little messy, and I'm worried that we're going to start, and now they're going to start falling off. So anything by those guys, I would want to pick up and take a look at. But again, that's the kind of story makers I'm looking at right now, and the kind of interesting stuff there that I'm into. I don't know if that counts as an answer if you're looking only for literature. I know I just don't have time to read anything but my own stuff, really, quite frankly. And I just want to sit and vegetate and drool slightly at the TV at the end of the day. But that's where I'm getting inspired of stories, and I'm thinking, oh, that's a neat move. I might have done this. I might have done that. So that's where my head's at right now.
Love it. What would you tell someone just starting out with reading again?
Oh, um, don't have my job. Don't have a busy life. Don't have the kind of life I have right now, that I feel that everything I do is intellectual, and so reading is just a little too arduous for me, other than my own stuff I want to do. And again, discipline. Discipline and networking are the two rules I wished I'd learned earlier. The value of just going out and meeting people, because you never know what's going to happen. 90% of your work and your life and your friends and your romantic associations are going to come from your networking. So don't call it networking if that gives you a bad taste in your mouth. Call it just meeting people. But discipline for reading. Definitely, I used to read a lot when I had to take the bus. When I had to take the train, had to take the bus. Always had a book then, for sure. So finding those times where you can read, and not reading your phone, not reading Twitter, not reading Facebook. That's not reading. That's not the same thing, right? I know we all do, and I'm not saying get off social media. Well, I guess maybe a little bit I am. Get off a little bit of social media, and if you want to read, if you like to read, set aside a time. And even if that could be your writing time, right? If you're like, I'm totally burnt out, I'm totally dried out, my muse is totally dried out, I can't write anymore for those 2 hours you said I need to book every morning, Josh. Well, then read someone who will inspire you. Read someone who you want to be like. And invariably, after a few weeks of doing that, you're gonna slay the books. You're gonna put books down, and you're gonna get ideas for sure. So that would be my recommendation there.
Love it. On the other side of that, what would you tell someone just starting to write their own book?
Wow, wow. It depends. So for a nonfiction book, it would be networking with the people you want to interview, networking with the people who work in this industry. Get big names attached. Go on Cameo if you need to, if that's related to what you're doing. I did this for a podcast one time. It's against the terms of service. You're not supposed to do this, but I would pay the Cameo fee to get them on my podcast, and ask them, paying the Cameo fee. That could work to get people in a nonfiction book. That might help you out, depending again on if you need a big name attached to it, because big names help get stuff out there, right? And you can attach to their social media. Same thing with fiction too, quite frankly, at that point. Um, for fiction, you got to have your I's dotted and your T's crossed. When it comes to a good story, you got to find people who are going to tell you the truth about how good the story ideas are that you have. It's going to ring a little hollow coming from me, because I'm not a big published author. But I don't even know how I want to phrase this without coming off the wrong way. I think a lot of people think that they can write a story, and a lot of people think that they have something to say there. I think, get feedback from people. Get feedback from people in the industry who know, and they'll tell you. If this is weak here, if this is not so great there. That's what I would do: is get feedback sooner rather than later. Discipline, 2 hours a day in the morning. Work on it. Hone your craft. Make it better. Do the networking portions too that you need to do. Hone your craft, and then sooner rather than later, after you have the first chapter done or whatever, or like a skeleton done or whatever, seek people out, because it's part of your networking too. Seek people out and get them to read it and give you feedback, and not just people who are going to tell you what you want to hear. And but also on the other side, not mean people either. don't go onto Reddit and do this because you're going to get nothing but mean people on Reddit, right? And so don't do that. Find a group that's going to tell you the truth. Go on to Upwork. There are professional people on Upwork who will give you their opinion, and they'll charge you, $100, couple $100 to do it. And I wouldn't. There's people on there who'll do it for $5 too. I wouldn't pay the $5 people. That would be a waste of money and time. I would pay the $100 people, the $200 people, and ask them what they think, and they'll tell you. And that can be invaluable. That could change the course of your life. That could be like, yes, everyone says this is great, I should go on with it. And you've actually asked them to be critical and asked them not to, to just kind of, sugarcoat it. Or they could be like, sorry, this is not for you. I know you want to do this, but this is just not quite your area of expertise. Maybe you could work on this, or maybe you could work on that, or those kinds of things. It could save you so much time and effort and heartache. Writing a book is heartache. It is a unforgiving, thankless job, right? No, you're not going to get published. And when I heard that the average amount of book sales for books right now is 250 books on average, that's an average amount of book sales, at least the stat that I looked at. I was flabbergasted. So I don't know if people know that. That's the average amount of books you should expect to sell, 250. For example, David Duchovny, the big time actor, David Duchovny, or at least he was in the 90s, a big time actor, David Duchovny, was on Bill Maher's show, Real Time with Bill Maher. And his week one, when he just released his latest book, his week one sales were 4,000 copies. And his agent told him that was he slated. That was an unexpectedly good week. 4,000 copies is an unexpectedly good week. Apparently I exist in the 90s because I thought like 40,000 copies should be the number, right? So I don't know if people know that number. So that's what I would tell authors is that, there are exceptions, of course, but for 90% of us, 300 people are going to read it. And if that's okay with you, then yeah, do it. But if that's not okay with you, then don't. Who wrote Harry Potter again? What's her name? I can't remember her name off the top of my head. The person who wrote
J.K. Rowling.
You're right. How could I forget? Yes, Rowling. She won the lottery. Okay. She was turned down like 100 times, first off. And then when she finally got picked up, she won the lottery. You're not going to be Rowling. Sorry. Statistically, you're not. And that's 99.9% of everyone listening to this. Sorry, that's just the way that it is. So that's not why my wife and I are writing this novel. It's because we could not write this novel. This is a story that we need to get out. We don't care if just 100 people read it. We would have done this anyway. We're doing it so professionally and spending thousands of dollars on it because I can afford it, because I do a lot of stupid SEO and AI consulting, which I already told Courtney I'm glad I don't have to talk about. But because we love this story and it's like our baby, and we could not write it. And we like to think that we're doing it right. We like to think we're telling the story right. We like to think that we're good at this. Maybe we are, maybe we're not. Maybe you'll read it and be like, yeah, Josh, okay, your writing was not to my taste. Maybe you'll say, fine, that's perfectly fine. But we can't help but not write this. If that's you, then do it for sure. If that's not you, seriously consider whether you want to start. That is my stark, blatant, rather blunt advice.
Love it. What's one thing that people are generally surprised to find out about you?
Wow. Wow. I don't know. They don't tell me. And because I'm mildly autistic, my EQ is really bad. I'm really bad at predicting what other people are going to think and say, unless I have I'm in psychologist mode and I'm analyzing your facial expressions and I've asked you some key questions. Maybe they're surprised I'm mildly autistic. I'm not sure. I was surprised to find out I was just diagnosed a couple of years ago. I thought I was just a nerd. And then they're like, oh, I think you're mildly autistic. I do the test. Oh yeah, you're autistic for sure. Okay, if you say so, so now like cognitive bias, right? Everywhere I go, I can't help but see something about autism, or I can't help but see neurospicy show up everywhere. And it's like, what is this new word, neurospicy? Everyone's saying, so it's my new word. I say I'm neurospicy all the time, like I'm a TikToker or something, like I've ever been on TikTok, right? So I don't know. I think people are surprised at. I have no idea. I couldn't even answer that. I think they're surprised at how much of a jerk I am. I have no idea, probably how blunt I can be. I think that's it. How blunt I can be, how not like everyone else I am. I think that's how surprised, what they're probably surprised about.
Love it. Is there anything else you would like to say or add?
I would like to say, if you want to write that book, do it. If you want to try it. You just need the discipline, right? You just need the discipline. I have had very few other greater loves in my life and joys in my life than making stories. If you're like me, and if you're like me, if you love to make stories, make them. Hone your craft, make it better. If you have something to say, if you have a position you think is important, and you have a nonfiction book to write it. Go for it. Join a group early that can give you feedback. Work with them. Discipline. You need the 2 hours a day. Plan it before anyone or anything else, and stick to that rather religiously, quite frankly, because that's the only way it'll ever get done. It's the only way. Procrastination and doubt is the book killer, right? That will kill your endeavor dead. The other thing that will kill your endeavor dead is ego, something I know a little about with my giant ego. So you need feedback as sooner rather than later. And so that's what I'd like to say. And don't let anyone tell you that all the stories have been told. No, they haven't. No, they haven't. Not even close. Not even close. You can think of something. You can. And quite frankly, some stories need to be retold. There's plenty of stories I've read that was a great story. It's been told 10 times. So what? Tell it again. Give it another spin. Polish it off and do it the way you would do it. There are only 7 notes in the major scale that every single song you have ever loved has been written in. I guarantee to you those chord progressions have been done before. But did you love that new song and the new way they did it? Yes, I'm sure you did. I know I do. I love music too. So do it. There's only 7 notes, and yet they keep making new songs. Music hasn't stopped suddenly. They haven't bothered making any new notes. They haven't made an 8th note. There is no H sharp, right? There's just 7 notes, and that's it. They keep making banger after banger out of these 7 notes. And so you can do it too. There's so many different kind of stories you can tell. Think of different angles, think of different ways of telling it. And another thing that my wife and I like to believe. Now, remember, this is coming from people who are a little older, and this is coming from people who had a great books education. It wasn't expensive. It was just in this quaint little town in Nanaimo in Canada. It's a beautiful little town on the water. It's a gorgeous town in British Columbia, and they had a great book school there. And we got to read these great books. We got to read Great Expectations and all these different works of Hesiod and Homer, and learn different Greek scales of music and learn all this stuff. Um, uh, don't write art for the time. Write art for the ages. Don't try to make what you think is cool now. Yes, you're going to sell some copies. Like if that's what you want to do, ChatGPT is going to is going to beat you out, right? AI is going to beat you out for writing trite writing. Don't write for this current age. Write for 50 years in the future. Even if you're not popular now, you have the chance of going down as being super popular in the future. Yes, Tolkien's a bad example because Tolkien was pretty popular in his day as well. But I don't know. I think the most endearing stories, the ones that we read from 100 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, are because they speak to the most human components of us. And when you've got a story or you've got an argument in fiction or nonfiction that ties into the deepest, chorus, most human parts of us, I think you automatically have a winner, or you have a giant leg up to having a winner. In my opinion, that's my personal opinion. Trashy novels are fun. Go ahead, write trashy novels all day long, right? But the more you put a human component in them, I think that's why the stories I mentioned before, like Star Wars and the Marvel sagas, I think the degree to which they have good acting and actually human stories is the degree to which they survive. All the fancy, everything else is just fluff, right? And the same thing happens in writing, where we're trying to be like, gender this is popular now, and queer that's popular now, and or this and that's popular now. Fine. Don't shy away from those things. I'm not saying go and revive the conservative norms of yesteryear. It's not what I'm saying at all. But I am saying try to tell those stories in a way that applies to everybody. That's the whole point. Having stories that apply to everyone, right? That everyone could feel themselves in the main character, or everyone could feel themselves in that problem. Make everyone wonder, what would I do in that situation? Or make everyone wonder, How does it apply to me, that your nonfiction that you're doing? Tell the human story, because at the end of the day, those are the stories that last for thousands of years and are the best stories ever told.
Love it. Where's the best place for readers to find your books? Are signed copies an option and the best place to connect with you?
If you want to connect with me, by all means, you can email me directly at joshbachynski@gmail.com. That's Josh, B as in Bob, ACHY as in YouTube, N as in Nancy, SKI@gmail.com. You can also go to thezombiesbook.com. That's the zombies spelled normally, thezombiesbook.com, and contact me there if you want to read the philosophy. Or I can also send you an advanced copy of how it ends and see how you like it. See how you like the book that my wife and I are writing, that we're very proud of, and we hope we've had blood, sweat, and tears over, and we hope that you might have at least happiness and joy, and maybe a little tear over too. It's the start of a saga of maybe 10 books. It's exactly 500 pages and exactly 150,000 words. It has exactly 50 chapters, and that's part of the story. That's on purpose, not by accident. So yeah, that's where you can contact me, and I'd love to hear from you. I also have that private philosophy group, which is totally free. If you'd like me to solve philosophy for you and all your life problems in 20 lectures or less, come on down and join my free philosophy group. I know I sound like I'm being facetious, but I'm quite serious. I solved philosophy in 20 lectures. Again, I didn't think it was that hard. I shouldn't say that. It was quite difficult. It took me till age 35 to do it. So it was fairly difficult to do. 45 to really polish it off and get it just right. But you're welcome to join that as well. And that'd be another good place to contact me too, because you can rest assured that my poor philosophy students get inundated with messages about my novel I'm writing as well, whether they like it or not. The free group at my disposal. But no, I try to keep it to philosophy there. But you can contact me in any of those ways. I'd love to talk with you.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for being here today. We're so grateful we got to interview you. We'll be sure to drop those links in the show notes. And again, thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Courtney. It's been a pleasure, and I hope I didn't talk too long. If you need me to talk more at you, I'm at your disposal.